Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Thursday morning chat. We get together once a week for a business chat to do some support to you and your business. And this fourth quarter, we've had a variety of things to support you in having the strongest fourth quarter ever. There's been promotions, there's been the blitz calls, there's been JJ on having your best Q4 ever. And today, oh my gosh, I'm very excited about today because we have Dr. Steve Taubman with us, and he's a mindset expert. He's written many books, and his books, I mean, you'll love the title of them. I just want to get one is called Unhypnosis: How to Wake Up, Start Over, and Create the Life You're Meant to Live. He's a mindfulness expert. He was a physician, chiropractor, magician, hypnotist, and we met many years ago at a DSWA convention, and he came around to the table and did magic. And it's been magic ever since, having Steve in my life. And he's been on our 30 Minutes of Wisdom call. Everyone loved him. He's an edutainer. You will get educated and entertained. His wit is amazing. He's brilliant. I love him. Dr. Steve, over to you.
Wow, boy, that introduction made it sound like I can't hold a job, but okay. I'm so happy to be here. You know, we get to make these things happen from time to time, and they're always
one sec. Gregory, are you going to pin Steve?
I did.
It doesn't look like that. I just want to have it be.
It might be on your end too. Do you have choices of how you're seeing the individual participants?
Yeah, we all have choices, but he's going to pin the two of us.
Okay.
I want people to see you. Yeah. So everyone put your speaker view on, and then
view.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it.
Okay. And I'm going to let you take it away.
Well, I don't want to spend any time with my background and history. Sometimes we have that conversation, but I thought what I would do is, except for one thing, except for this, how many people watching this today have ever seen a magician perform live? And, and some of us have. I remember the first time I was 10 years old and my parents brought me to Washington Square Park. And we were walking through the park, and there was a stand-up magician, a close-up magician, and he had pants like up to here, with suspenders and a big bow tie and a like a bowler hat with a brim, complete dork, right? And he asked me out of the crowd. He brought me up from the crowd, and he asked me if I had a quarter, which I did, and he took my quarter. And actually, he didn't even take it. He just said, "Hold it like this," and I held it. And he lit a cigarette. And he pushed the cigarette right through my quarter while I was holding the quarter. And I remember thinking, even at the young, tender age of 10, what a jerk. Because it was my ice cream money, But then what he did, and this was cool, I'll show it to you what he did. He took a scarf and he put it in his hand like this. And then he waved his hand around like that, and then the scarf disappeared. And that got my attention. And I started thinking about what is magic. And of course, a lot of the more esoteric questions I asked myself came much later. But the bottom line was, magic is a state of mind. Magic is something that provides us with so many teaching moments, the sense of what's possible or what's impossible, the possibility that there is something more than what we see. And then the backstage version of it, which is, if I want to create the experience of magic, there are a lot of little things I need to do, right? Like you see a duck gliding across the surface of the water. You don't see the legs paddling like crazy. You see effortlessness. And so for us, wouldn't it be great if we were able to express effortlessness and move smoothly across the water of our own lives, and understand that, there are going to be some things we need to do below the surface. And are they producing the results we want? Which is why today's topic is about getting unstuck. So, I've written a number of books, and the first one, of course, is about, breaking through the barriers of our own thinking and getting the results we want. And lately, I've been talking a lot about resilience, bouncing back from the difficulties of our lives and creating something beautiful amidst the chaos. And so when we talk about getting unstuck, first of all, it delights me because for, I think it was 5 weeks in a row, I was #2 on the bestseller list behind the book Getting Unstuck. So I was just bumping my head up against, what was his name? Gary, or the guy's name who wrote Getting Unstuck. But that was one with the book Bulletproof. And I was that close, but for Getting Unstuck. So I was stuck behind Getting Unstuck. And so I say that just to gently make it true that, we all get stuck, right? We all have that experience. But the first distinction I would like everybody to make, I think, is, are you stuck or are you just on hold? Are you stuck or are you in a very important stage of your developmental experience in life, which is sometimes not doing? Sometimes in our lives, we have to be in a place where there's not a lot of movement. And that's like, when you watch the bamboo shoot up from the ground, it's been nurturing itself for years before it suddenly makes that giant leap. And you might be in that nurture stage. And I think it's really, really important, before we discuss the steps of getting unstuck, to recognize that not every lack of movement is stuck. Not every lack of movement represents a lack of progress, because there's a lot of progress that's happening within. And in reality, the process of getting unstuck in the way that we're thinking of it, in other words, being able to take action, is the same process, whether it's inside of our own soul and our own heart, or the externals, the getting things done part. Right. So we could talk about this at a lot of levels, Robin, right? I mean, we could talk about it from the perspective of, how do I get unstuck inside of my soul, inside of my heart, inside of the negativity that's keeping me here? Or how do I just get unstuck in terms of getting unstuck from thinking that things aren't okay when I'm not in motion, the very deepest part of it? Or the next level out, now that I'm unstuck, now that I'm doing things, am I doing them efficiently? Am I getting them done quickly? Am I getting them done elegantly? And so these are all different levels of getting unstuck.
So is it part of the getting unstuck really understanding what are the obstacles and barriers? In our culture, we typically, want to get from here to here, we put our foot more on the gas, even though our foot's on the brake. So
Right.
what I hear you doing is like, okay, where's the brake? So we can let go of the brake so we can move forward.
Nicely said. Yeah, where is the brake? What is that? And sometimes the foot on the brake is, it's completely unnecessary, where that fight that we're having with ourselves is completely unnecessary. So step one, we'll do this in micro doses, micro steps. And the first step is going to be, take a beat, take a step, take a break from the insistence on having to be in motion. Just kind of wrap a little love around yourself. Okay, I am where I am, and maybe it feels like I'm stuck, but what if this were just a healing moment? There's a part of me that just needs a little healing, and I'm going to just give myself that. I'm going to give myself that. I wake up every morning. I'm a pretty positive guy most of the time, but I wake up every morning and I wish that the day wasn't starting. I'm always, I drag myself into the day, and I've got to do some things in order to move forward, right? So I take Ernie for a walk, and I do affirmations, and I speak gratitude out loud. And I take deep breaths, and I do a little meditative process. And one of the things I do is I recognize that there's this part of me, and I think it's good to look at these things as parts of ourselves as opposed to our whole self. But there are parts of ourselves that are resistant, that are needy, that are guilt-ridden, that are afraid, that are in pain. There are hurting parts of ourselves. And it just so happens that when I wake up, those are front and center. Right. And if I ignore them, if I try to push through them in a way of dogged determination and persistence, it doesn't work. I may get through the day, but I'm not really happy most of the day. On the other hand, if I take Ernie for a walk, and amidst my rituals of breathing deeply and, being present in the moment, if I turn some of that presence, some of that attention inward, if I just give a little love and presence to the parts of me that are in pain, that are not wanting to wake up, and I just sort of include them, I give them space to be, they have a tendency to soften. So that's the very first kind of stuck that I have. I don't know about you, but the very first kind of stuck I have is this emotional stuckness. It's just, it's just, I've got to love myself. I've got to move beyond that part first. And I know that part of me has all sorts of different ways of showing itself, because I understand the concept of self-sabotage. Right. So later in the day, maybe I've got a goal and I start moving towards it and I do something that screws it up, that, like, maybe I procrastinate, or maybe I just, I'm trying too hard. And there's so many different ways I'd love to know how different people sabotage themselves. Right.
You guys can write it in the chat.
And yeah, you can. And, the question we're asking ourselves there is, once we if we make peace with ourselves as the day begins, and if we accept that sometimes we need to not be doing or thinking about doing, but simply being with ourselves, that's the first step of getting unstuck. The next step of getting unstuck is to start recognizing all the little ways in which we literally feel held back. What are those? How are we feeling held back? And so I want to put a frame around that stuff. Okay, that's the big kind of the core issue, right? Is what does it look like when I have a goal, I have a dream, I have an objective, and I start moving towards it, and then suddenly I hit that wall, right? Right, I just boom. You've heard me tell the story about the unhypnosis story, where I was hypnotizing somebody during a show, and I told him, I said, when you wake up, 3 things are going to happen. I said, first, you don't believe you're hypnotized. Second, you want to get out of here because you think this is the worst show you've ever seen. And third, there's an invisible wall 3 feet in front of you. And when he woke up, he was so upset that he was there, because obviously it wasn't working, and obviously he wasn't hypnotized. And he got up and he started, pounding off the stage, and then hit the wall. Push, and he pushed, and he pushed, and the harder he pushed, the less movement he had. Because why? Because he was pushing against himself. That's what stuck is. So when I ask, what are you stuck by? You're always stuck by you. Right. Yep. But if you're stuck by you have someplace you want to go, but you're held back. You got to a certain point, and now suddenly, bam, and you know what that kind of stuck feels like. It could feel like anger, irritation, aggravation, suddenly feeling sad or needy for no reason at all. Like, all the stuff comes up, right? And that's a very decisive moment in our lives, because what do we do with that moment? What do we do when suddenly we hit the invisible wall? What we mostly do is we push harder. What's the matter with me? I'm trying as hard as I can. I'm not getting anywhere. And it seems like very impenetrable. And in essence, it is, because you're pushing against you. As hard as you push is as hard as you push. What you resist persists. And that's how we get stuck. So we're stuck by, so that's the first thing we talked about is taking a moment to really be present to yourself, loving yourself from the very get-go of your day. The second thing I'm discussing is the inevitability of hitting our own walls, our own invisible walls, as we move forward. By the way, there's Ernie's face coming into the screen from above. Here, right.
Hi, Ernie.
So the inevitability of getting ourselves stuck behind our own invisible walls. What are our invisible walls? They are the ways in which we have been hypnotized, the ways in which we have been programmed to believe in our own limitations, right? And we sustain those. I've been doing this talk lately called The Magic of Bouncing Back, and I use an acronym, and the M in magic is the word misdirection. Because as a magician, I misdirect your attention. When I take that scarf and I put it here, if I wave the other hand, you look at the other hand, you never see the scarf disappear. You're being misdirected, right? And we misdirect ourselves all the time. We have a goal, a dream, a desire, and then we let our old thinking, our old patterns in the subconscious mind direct us or misdirect us away from the goal we have. Again, it's all us doing it to us. So with this guy who's stuck on the stage and he can't get off the stage because of this invisible wall that doesn't even exist, What does he need in order to move through to the other side? What does he need in order to continue to move effortlessly toward the goal he set for himself, which was simply to walk out off the stage? What he needs is not more effort. What he needs is to wake up. That's all he needs. He needs to wake up. You're stuck. You're not awake. If you're stuck, in all likelihood, there's some element of old baggage that's in the way of taking action. Perhaps it's old habits or attitudes. And those old habits, those old attitudes, those old fears, they form this invisible barrier that you think you have to just push harder to move through. And then stuck feels like a very scary place. But in fact, stuck is simply an acknowledgement that you've fallen off course. In meditation, we say every forget is a remember. If you remember, like I always like to ask this question in the crowd. I say, how many of you meditate? And some hands go up, and I say, how many of you have tried to meditate, but you got frustrated because you kept thinking, and then you stopped, and then every hand goes up, and then I say, well, let me respond to that with one word: duh. Because the reality is that that's what's supposed to happen, right? You're meditating because your mind is wandering. Meditating, if you could sit down and close your eyes and have no thought for an hour, you wouldn't need to meditate, right?
You're already there.
Meditation is practice. It's exercise. It's exercising your focus muscles, your ability to bring your mind back, right? And it's the same with being stuck. You're stuck because your mind has been misdirected, because your old emotional patterns, your old habits and attitudes have drawn you off course, and yet you're ignoring that and just trying to push like the guy on the stage. When in fact, this is a moment of astonishment. This is a moment of aha, a moment of remembering. Aha, I'm not getting anywhere right now. I'm not getting anywhere because my old habits, my old patterns are at play. Let me bring my mind back into the moment, like we do in meditation. Let me bring my mind back into the moment. Let me reconnect with me. Let me stop making the thing I'm trying to accomplish so important that I'm going to ignore the essence of myself. Like when you're so busy that you have to go to the bathroom, but you won't. And your effectiveness is diminishing by the moment, and you're getting more and more agitated and impatient and ineffective because you won't go to the bathroom. Go to the freaking bathroom. Right. So that's probably the biggest message I could share with you. Go to the bathroom. Look for, like we say, like they say in the 12-step programs, they'll say, never try to take action when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired.
Or have to go to the bathroom.
Or have to go to the bathroom. Exactly. So take a mental inventory in those moments. What is it that's influencing your ability to move smoothly and effortlessly forward? And then do the work of waking up. So what is the work of waking up? The work of waking up is there's a distinct difference between, like when I walk Ernie in the morning, there's a distinct difference between just walking him and letting all the messages in my head, like, oh, it's too early. I want to be in bed. I wish I didn't have to take this walk right now. Oh my God, I've got a million things to do. Ernie, come on already. Like all the, internal dialogue that's going constantly, that's like being asleep. That's like being hypnotized. That's all, mental content. It's not the experience of being awake. The experience of being awake happens when I say, okay, stop. Take 10 deep, deep, deep breaths, and then hold your breath, and then look around. And notice that until you did that, you didn't hear the sound of the falling leaves hitting the leaves below. You didn't hear the sound of the water as it percolated against the shore. You didn't smell the deciduous leaves as they were, dying and changing and creating this sweet smell on the ground. You didn't see the snake, slithering by in the woods. You didn't see the funny thing that Ernie just did. You wake up, you feel this qualitative difference in the moment, because the moment has otherwise gone by until you give it your full attention. So at the very foundation of getting unstuck is presence, which is funny because What am I saying? I'm saying the very foundation of getting unstuck is stopping the one thing that we don't want to do when we're stuck.
Amazing.
Right? It's like you're, like they said, like a cat in a bag is like wrestling its way out. And like if it just stops, or muddy water in a glass, and if you just leave it, it eventually settles. We're talking about the settling process so that clarity arises. And when clarity arises, you already are unstuck. You're already in a state where the next right action becomes clearer. So when I talk about this concept of magic, the magic of bouncing back, or the magic of getting unstuck, and we say misdirection, mindfulness, this first step of getting clarity. The second step is action, right? Now, if you've done what we just talked about, now the next action will probably present itself very clearly, but any action is better than no action. And small actions are better than large actions. When I learned to, do magic, and I start with, like, I've got a coin, and I take the coin, and I want to make it look like I made the coin vanish, right? That's what I want to do. I want to make it like poof, disappear. But the way I do that is I take a coin and I put it in my other hand. And I take a coin and I put it in my other hand. And I do this like 100 times because I want the time that I do it like that way and it disappears to look exactly the same, right? So there's this minute next right action thing, the inch by inch, it's a cinch concept that we have to do that. We have to look at this massive things in front of us. I mean, there are spiritual stories to this effect. I mean, in the Bible, the whole, the parable of the fish, right? You feed here and then you feed there, and you don't look at a crowd of 1 million people and say, how the hell am I going to feed all these people? Right? You don't look at this job you have in front of you and say, oh my God, this is too big. What am I going to do? That's, again, the paralysis of analysis. Instead, you just look for the next thing you need to do, and the next thing you need to do, and the next thing you need to do. And if you do it that way, eventually you look back and you see all that you've accomplished. Does this make sense?
It makes total sense.
I remember doing mountain climbing, like climbing through like the Adirondacks, and I'd be on one mountain. It's like, let me just enjoy this mountain, and then go up, and then go down, and go up, and go down. And then you look back and you see the mountain you were on, and it's a mile away because you just put one foot in front of the other. So that's a big part of it. It's this bite-sized actions is a huge part of getting unstuck. Bite-sized actions. If you're stuck because you knew that you should be exercising, but you haven't been, maybe the first bite-sized action is you put on your sneakers, and that's it. Put them on, take it back off again. I don't care. Just take an action, right? When your house is a mess, wash one dish, right? What's probably going to happen, right? I wash one dish. Well, as long as I'm here, I think I'll do another one. Oh, as long as I'm here, I'll finish the sink. And then the next thing you know, you've completed the job. So you're creating momentum from a small, small thing.
So Steve, our profession. That's where we met. You've spoken to hundreds of thousands of people, many of them in our direct selling profession, and the actions. What do you see gets people most stuck in our business model?
I think it's almost always just the fear of introducing the concept of your product, or the fear of just meeting a new person. A lot of it's just interpersonal, right? What do you think? I mean, I'd be curious if you agree with that.
I think it may vary per person, because you're talking about the internal judgments and things that we have, and the not good enough things that we live in, and I don't deserve that, or whatever. I can't be like that. A lot of comparison,
Yeah.
And I think our team knows that, I quote Jim Rohn all the time. He says, work twice as hard on yourself as you do on your business, because you are your business.
Yeah.
And that's why we love having guests like you on, to help people become aware of what those things are that are causing the stuckness, the restraining forces. People are working so hard instead of, that.
Yeah.
So I think it varies.
So, and that's all great stuff, because those moments, again, this is very much like a shy guy who wants to meet a woman or something, and wants to go up but doesn't have the courage.
He needs Ernie
to meet. Well, get a dog. That'll probably solve most of your problem. But make one of the things about this process that I'm recommending is that it's sustainable. It's like if you learn how to stop, be present, feel what's actually going on inside of you, give it space, and allow it to dissolve in its own way, then a lot of things will improve in your life. So maybe the first likely action for you is the next time I see somebody at Starbucks that I think would be worth approaching and, creating this initial relationship with, maybe the first thing is I'm going to take 3 steps in their direction. And at the end of 3 steps, I'm going to stop. I'm going to check in with myself. I'm just going to feel my fear. And then what happens is when we allow ourselves to feel it, it dissolves most of the time, right? When we give it full attention, we're not trying to do anything with it. We're just being present to ourselves. And then maybe I can take another 2 steps, right? So whatever the gap is between I'm over here and the thing I need to do is over here, tiny actions moving you toward that, but checking in with yourself as you move towards it will make it a more, as I said, sustainable, but also a more consciousness-raising exercise. So that maybe the very act of just getting 3/4 of the way there was a major win for you. I'm not going to pick up 1,000 pounds. I never will, probably, right? But if I wanted to pick up 1,000 pounds, I wouldn't start with it. I'd start with something smaller. And then focus, right? The other element of this is the element of focus. And I think this is probably going to be the last principle we could share because of time. But the concept of focus is so important because, we tend to do things half-assed. We tend to do them without putting our presence in that play. I'll tell you a quick story. My friend, back years ago, before I myself was a pilot, he had a little plane. He wanted to share the experience. He said, "You want to come out and take a flight with me?" And I said, "Sure, why not? I've lived long enough." So we went out to the plane, and it was in this little airport, and there was a gate, and he asked me to get out of the car and open the gate. I had to use a key and everything, and then he would drive through, and then I'd close the gate and jump in the car. We drive out to the plane. So I get out of the car and I unlock the gate and I unwrap the chain and I open it up and he drives through and I close up the gate and I rewrap the chain and I lock the thing up. And I see him looking back at me from his car with this look of astonishment. And I said, "What's the problem?" He goes, "How are you going to get back to the car?" And I realized I've locked myself on the outside of the gate. And, of course, I tell that story because my therapist told me to. No, I tell you, I tell you the story because we're all smart, but we're not always all there, right? And how many of you have ever looked for your cell phone while you're talking on your cell phone, right? Or the worst is when you're talking to somebody and you're like, "Hold on, I'm trying to find my phone."
Where's my glasses? And they're on your head.
They're on my head, right? Yeah. So recognizing that we have a tendency toward a lack of focus, it's just one more area where we need to pay attention, because if we do strengthen our focus, and again, meditation, washing that one dish, going out and noticing the beauty, making a persistent ritual of bringing my attention back into the moment, it's going to make you better at everything. It's going to make you more courageous. It's going to give you more tolerance of your own fear, which makes you courageous. And then you're going to do these little things that are going to end up making your business better because you're not stuck, right? Yes, the feelings are there, but you're not stuck by them. And it's a very interesting way to live, because that's what most comedians do, right? That's why anything I say is funny, is because I'm out here watching the insanity of my own brain, right? And that's where you go. Eventually, it's just like, we're human, we're nuts. But they were also capable of laughing at ourselves. So I guess that's probably the last message I would leave you with is, we always say someday we'll look back at this and laugh. Why wait? Do it now. So I hope that's been insightful and fun. If we had more time, we'd have more to talk about. But I love and appreciate these opportunities, and I love you and Gregory, of course. And any friend of yours is a friend of mine. And if anybody has any questions, we could definitely field those or in the future. And you were asking me how people could get more of my stuff. So
because you have got so many amazing programs, everything from procrastination annihilation, to bulletproof and resilient in your new program. And why don't you share a little bit about how people can find more about you and get connected with your community, because you have so many resources on your website that are, I love reading them. Yeah. Uh-oh, where'd you go? Am I the only one who's frozen?
No, it looks like Dr. Steve, there he is.
There he
Okay.
is.
Yeah, I'm moving.
Okay.
Okay.
He was frozen for a minute.
A good place to start is just go to bestofsteve.com. Best of Steve. It'll give you a free digital download of the first chapter of Bulletproof. It'll get you into my mailing list. That way, when I send anything out, I'll get it out to you. Also, go to my regular website, which is stevetaubman.com. And from what I understand, the sign-up sheet there is not functioning. So, but feel free to go there, and you could go to the contact form that does work, and reach out to me and let me know how I can help you. Whatever would be helpful, let me know, and we'll make sure we connect you with the right resources.
Love it, because you have so many amazing resources, I mean, over the years, and you've worked with our profession quite a bit.
Yes.
I'm actually going to reach out to our company with your information, and maybe we can have you at our corporate conventions. That would be really wonderful.
It would be great for me. I'd love it.
Yeah, me too.
Yay.
Okay, so if you have a question, you can put it in the raise your hand. I see Sunshower Rose has her hand up, so you want to unmute your line, my dear? Great. I see that you're unmuted, but I can't hear you.
Yeah. Yeah, she's unmuted.
Yeah. Okay. Let's try someone else until Sunshower can come back. If you have a question for Steve, you can either write it in the chat. Yeah, it's stevetaubman.com. And you have some audio programs and books and all kinds of other things. Okay, she came back in. Let's see if that works better.
Good.
Yeah. This woman is an amazing student, and she's constantly working on herself. So Sunshower, you want to unmute your line and see if we can hear you this time?
Maybe the microphone may not be connected.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Hi, there we go. There we go.
I left the meeting and came back in. Sometimes I have to do that. Dr. Steve, thank you so much. You're just crazy. I love to watch you. I did watch you, on something. I think your own site before we came on today. So I love your stories. Did I miss something? Did we get the whole acronym of MAGIC? I got that.
No, that's a good question. Let me finish that for you. So I said misdirection is the one I start with, and then I use mindfulness as, of course, a tool in overcoming that. And we said A is action. G is gratitude. Our gratitude is a fuel for optimism. It keeps us moving forward beyond our perceived limitations. So gratitude is important. I always tell the story about the two twin boys whose parent tell them that it's, for their birthday, that go out to the shed, and there's they open up the shed door, and there's a big pile of manure in there. And, one of the kids starts crying. He's like, I don't want manure for my birthday. And the other kid grabs a shovel and starts digging. He says, I know there's got to be a pony in here somewhere. So it's like, being optimistic amidst what perceived, manure of our lives. So gratitude is good fuel for that. And then I is for imagination. The idea that maddest of all is seeing life as it is and not as it ought to be. It's a line from Don Quixote. We need to be willing to see beyond the limits of our current experience. And then the last one is community. And that's so important, that we come together as community. None of us are as smart as all of us. You can't be your best self by yourself. So picking up on that, and realizing that we have a natural tendency to try to hide our challenges. And that's the worst thing we can do. We have to share with people who understand how to respond to them, not to react and, just sympathize.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
You're very welcome.
I love it. I love it.
By the way, I noticed, Robin, that Sarah and Marvin asked, they said, what does one do when one realizes she's been hypnotized by the public narrative and made a big mistake? I think the answer to that is the same as always. It's like, we need to step back from it. We need to forgive ourselves. The waking up process has nothing to do with the circumstance. That's one of the things people think, oh, I'm hypnotized, I got to, consciously change the way I'm thinking. Well, you can't consciously change the way you think. You've got to empty before you could fill, right? It's the empty teacup. That's the only objective that you have when you realize that you're kind of on automatic. is to get off automatic, because everything else you do is suspect. Every thought you have to try to fix your bad thoughts is another thought, and your thoughts are all suspect to some extent.
Beautiful. And, that forgiveness part is also liberating, like gratitude. It just completely changes the energy. And, it's the judgment so often with so many of us, our self-judgment that gets in the way. Once we have that awareness, so many of us have a tendency to get into judgment versus, forgiveness and move on. Yeah. Great.
Sure.
And someone said, Casey has a great issue to address. Okay, Casey, what is it? You want to unmute? Thanks for your ideas. I'm not sure what you brought up, Casey. If you want to unmute, that would be great. Oh, I have a fear of not knowing what to say as a follow-up once someone shows interest but doesn't watch the video I sent. I've tried a couple of suggestions from our wonderful team, but it's still a struggle.
Well, there are practical questions in that, and there are also, again, psychological aspects to it, right? So one of the things is, continue using whatever strategies your coaches are telling you, because some of those things are tried and true and will probably help. But, one of the things you might question is, how you're asking in the first place, and whether or not there's a certain amount of timidity. Am I being timid in this? Am I not being, clear in doing this? That's I think a big problem for a lot of us, is we're just a little timid, so we could just barely get up the fear, get up the temerity to ask somebody to do something, let alone call them on it when they don't. And that's a high level of courage, and it's something that you develop a little bit more as time goes on. But again, when that happens, the sentence started with, I'm having a hard time figuring out how to do this, how to get the courage for this. And again, it's going to be, again, self-forgiveness. It's going to be a certain amount of humor and figuring out, like, if you're in a state of humor, like if I asked Robin to do something and she didn't do it, I'm not going to be like, oh, I better not say anything again because I don't want to nag her. I'm just going to be, hey, Robin, I'm going to have, because we've developed a relationship. So our relationship can stand a little bit of nudging. It could stand a little bit of humor. And that kind of thing is probably more important than whether or not somebody does something. It's like people work with people they know, like, and trust. So, if you haven't built enough of the social capital, put more energy there than you are on the nuts and bolts of the process.
Well, I met a lot of people at an event that were very health conscious, very much into the latest technology, the latest products. It was wonderful, a wonderful atmosphere. I had about 20 people say, tell me everything. I haven't heard about stem cell activation. I was so jazzed. I was floating. I got their information. I came home. I sent them the video, and about 3 responded, and the others didn't. And it's like, now I have to follow up. Now what do I say? I say, well, hey, you were so excited. I was excited. What the heck? How come you're not answering?
Yeah, and they're too far away to smack. Yeah, no, I get that. I deal with that. I'm doing real estate now. I've got a real estate practice here in Vermont. And if you know anybody who's looking for a place in Vermont, send them my way, because we have fun and get the job done. But what you're talking about there, Casey, is, first of all, it's human nature. It's, unfortunately, you're going to see a relatively small number of people who actually take action, because people are disappointing. And it often happens that way. But at the same time, like proactivity, being proactive as best you can. So in my experience, like I've done these like door-to-door meeting people, so they know that I'm a realtor in their neighborhood. So I'll drop by some useful materials for them. And sometimes you get to the door, you knock and you say, hey, I'm Steve Taubman, I'm a realtor. And they're like, I don't want to talk to you. I'm not selling my house. And like they've got their guard up, right? So what I've learned to do is if I'm doing that sort of thing, I'll get to your house, like knock, knock, Robin answers the door. I say, hey, I'm Steve, I'm a local realtor. I'm not trying to buy your house. You know, I'm like, it's okay. Don't, you know, I'm not doing, that's not what I'm doing here. Give me just a second. And it's just an acknowledgement of human nature without making anybody wrong. I just want you to know, like, hey, you know, hey, I sent you that thing. I know, you know, we're all busy. I know we have a lot of things to do, and yet I still think it's worthwhile for you to see it. So let me propose an idea, right? How about, because I could get more out of this every time I watch it. Could we just take 5 minutes and watch it together? You know, like things like that. There are workarounds, and you just sort of, you maintain your enthusiasm. Don't let the turkeys get you down, as they say, and you know, and it'll all come out just fine.
Thank you. That's great. I like that a lot.
Oh, my pleasure.
And another thing you might want to do, Casey, is, you know, it seemed like you're really interested when we first met. Do you remember what it was that you wanted to change in your health that you think stem cells would be helpful for?
Oh,
you know, just
gorgeous. You see, that's the brilliance of Robin, you know,
Yeah.
that kind of thing, because you hear it reframe. You see, anytime something doesn't work, it probably needs a reframe. And that's just the total reframe. You're totally taking somebody to a different way of thinking. Robin, I do need to jump off because I have to go to a conference here in a moment.
Well, so everyone knows how to reach Dr. Steve in liveyoungeryoutube.com. He did a presentation under 30 minutes of wisdom. You can get more of Dr. Steve. You can go to his website. His books are amazing. His programs, he's a gift to the world. You know, waking up is what we're here to do, and be present and let those things melt away, and then take action, forgive ourselves for all that judgment and whatever. And Steve, you're a gift to the planet. We're so grateful.
Well, I hope I've contributed, but to tell you the truth, you guys contributed much more to me, because I feel great right now. I appreciate all your comments. If you have a question that I didn't answer for you, feel free to email me at stevetaubman@gmail.com and I'll answer it. But for now, got to run. So thank you so much for having me. Love you guys. I appreciate you. Take good care. See you, Gregory.
Thank you. Thank
Bye,
you.
Dr. Steve.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Everyone can unmute if you want and say thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Great call. Awesome call.
Yay!
Love
Thank
it.
Now's the time for the work, you know, emptying out, letting things clear, being present, and then taking those little steps. So have a wonderful day, everyone. The best fourth quarter ever.
Thanks for inviting us, you guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Robin. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Bye. What'd you say?
Bye, guys.
Bye.